The classroom was unusually silent that morning, the kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful but rather heavy, pressing down on the heart. Sunlight slipped through the dirty windows of grade 6B, falling unevenly across the wooden desks scratched with initials and doodles, carrying memories of hundreds of children who had passed through over the years. At the very back of the room sat a boy, thin, quiet, shoulders curved inward, as if trying to hide from the world. His name was Ahan, and though he was only 12, exhaustion sat on his face like he had lived far longer. That day, the lesson was math, a subject that made Ahan's stomach twist into knots. The teacher, Madame Sophia, walked between the desks with a book in one hand and a ruler in the other, her heels clicking sharply on the floor, a sound that always made Ahan's heart beat faster. She stopped near him, tapped the desk with the ruler, and asked him a problem he had already forgotten. His mind went blank, like it always did when she stood over him. His lips trembled, but no words came out. Around him, the other students watched, waiting. Madame Sophia sighed loudly, annoyed, making sure everyone heard her. "Useless," she said, shaking her head in disappointment. "You are absolutely useless, Ahan. You can't even solve the simplest problem. What will you ever become?" The word hit him harder than a slap. Useless. It echoed in his ears, sank into his bones, and settled somewhere deep inside his heart. Some of the children giggled, some looked away, but Ahan stayed frozen, staring at his notebook where numbers swam before his eyes like a blur. And from that moment, everything inside him changed. Before we continue, dear viewers, if you believe no child deserves to be insulted, if you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it so more people can hear stories that remind us to be gentle with one another. That afternoon, Ahan walked home slowly along the unpaved road leading to a small rental house. Dust rose around his feet as he dragged them forward. His school bag, faded and torn near the zipper, felt heavier than usual, not because of books, but because of the words he carried inside him. When he reached home, he quietly pushed open the door. His father, Riaz, looked up with a smile. Riaz worked as a helper in a small repair shop. His salary barely covered rent and food, but he tried to hide the hardship from his son by keeping a brave face. "You're home early," Riaz said warmly, wiping sweat from his forehead. "How was school?" Ahan wanted to lie. He wanted to say everything was fine, but the word useless felt too big to swallow today. He dropped his bag and sat on the floor, tears spilling before he could stop them. Riaz rushed to him, worried. "What happened, Beta? Why are you crying?" Ahan wiped his face with his sleeve, but the tears kept coming. He took a shaky breath and whispered, "Madame said I'm useless," in front of everyone. For a moment, Riaz felt the air knocked out of him. He held his son's face gently in his calloused hands and looked into his eyes. "You are not useless," he said, voice firm but kind. "Never think that. You hear me?" Ahan nodded weakly, but his father could see the damage was deeper than a simple insult. It had carved into the boy's confidence like a blade. Riaz hugged him tightly, vowing to himself that he would not let anyone crush his son like this again. The next morning, Riaz made a decision that changed everything. He woke up earlier than usual, washed his face with cold water, combed his hair neatly, and wore his best shirt, the one he only used for special days. He asked Ahan for his school report, the one he had kept hidden because he was embarrassed of the marks. But Riaz didn't want the report to judge Ahan. He wanted it to explain him. He held the report carefully in his hands and set out for school. Meanwhile, in the classroom, Ahan felt tense. He wondered what would happen when his father arrived. His stomach churned with nervousness. Madame Sophia was already in a strict mood, tapping her pen impatiently on the table. When Riaz entered the room, everyone turned to stare. Parents rarely came during school hours, and certainly not looking as serious as he did. Ahan lowered his eyes, worried, but Riaz didn't shout or cause a scene. He walked to the front politely and asked, "Madame, may I speak with you for a moment?" Madame Sophia adjusted her glasses, surprised. "Yes, Mr. Riaz, what seems to be the issue?" Riaz took a slow breath and placed the folded report on her desk. "Yesterday you called my son useless. he said quietly, but the emotion in his voice trembled through the room. Students sat still, sensing something important was happening. Madame Sophia stiffened. I may have expressed disappointment in his performance. He never answers correctly. Reyes opened the report. In subjects like reading, writing, and science, Ahon's marks were not high, but they showed improvement. But at the bottom of the report, in an attached note, something else was written, something most teachers overlooked. It was from a psychologist the school had referred Ahon to last year. The note stated that Ahon had mild learning difficulties, which made it hard for him to process information under pressure. It didn't mean he was slow or stupid. It simply meant he learned differently. Reyes pointed to that note with a trembling finger. My boy is not useless, he said softly. He tries harder than you know. He stays up late trying to understand his lessons. He practices writing until his fingers hurt. He struggles, but he doesn't give up, and he cries when he thinks he disappoints you. A hush fell over the room. Madame Sophia looked at the note again, realizing she had never paid attention. She had only seen Ahon's silence, not the storm inside him. She felt a sting of guilt, a sinking sensation in her chest. Reyes continued, his voice shaking now. I may not be an educated man, madame, but I know one thing. No child should ever be called useless. Words can break hearts. Please don't break his. For a moment, no one moved. Even the birds outside seemed silent. Ahon sat with tears in his eyes, overwhelmed that his father had come all this way for him, had spoken for him, had protected him. Madame Sophia slowly removed her glasses. I'm sorry, she said, voice soft. I didn't realize. I should not have said that. She turned to Ahon, who could barely meet her gaze. You're not useless. You're brave for trying. The apology was sincere, and the children watching learned something important that day. Respect matters more than intelligence. Kindness matters more than perfection. From that day forward, something changed in the classroom. Madame Sophia paid more attention to Ahon's needs. She gave him time to answer. She praised his small achievements. She tried to understand him instead of labeling him. And slowly, the boy who once sat curled into himself began sitting straighter, raising his hand more often, smiling more freely. Ahon's grades didn't suddenly become perfect, but his confidence grew like a seed finally receiving sunlight. He started believing he could learn, and belief, as we know, is the first step toward growth. Months later, during a school exhibition, Ahon's science project about wind turbines won special recognition. His father stood proudly in the audience, clapping with tears in his eyes. Madame Sophia congratulated him personally, genuinely proud of his hard work. Ahon beamed, standing beside his project, feeling something he had never felt before, pride in himself. And it all began the day his father walked into the classroom with a simple report and a heart full of love. Dear viewers, if this story touched your heart, if you believe every child deserves kindness, encouragement, and patience, please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps spread more stories that heal, uplift, and inspire. Before we end, I have a small request. Comment below. Every child deserves respect, because sometimes a few gentle words can change a life.